We want to talk today about one of the most important topics to you. One of what we know is for many people, their greatest aspiration, and that is to bless those they love most in a way that is beyond their current expectations. How to do that with finance? Trusts as a structure within financial planning have exploded in America. They were originally the domain of only America's wealthiest, but today, literally millions of families have financial trusts in place to shield excess taxation between generations and to pass on the greatest amount of wealth possible. This industry consumes over $250 billion a year in fees to try and get these trust structures correct. However, despite all that money, all the time, all the planning, that doesn't even measure the time and effort on the family's part who put these trusts in place. Bank of America concluded 70% of the families who have put trusts into place consider them failures. Why? Let's think about what Jesus said. And that was specifically, if you want to be wise, build your house on rock, on a strong foundation. Think of the house itself, the documents, the tax planning, is that component of the trust. The foundation is what goes into the trust. Financial assets, or as we would highlight for investors and families, physical gold and physical silver. Today, the line item of gold in trusts is essentially zero. In many surveys we've seen, gold doesn't even show up in terms of what's going into financial portfolios. Now, why would that be? I want to encourage you to talk to your attorneys and to talk to your tax specialists about a topic called dual enrollment. When an attorney represents a client, he is obligated to put the client's interests ahead of his own. If he doesn't, he can be reported to the bar and even disbarred. In finance, however, that is not the case. I want to separate financial advisory firms from the many wonderful men and women who work as advisors. Financial advisory firms can frequently choose to go for a designation called fiduciary. When you are wearing the hat of a fiduciary, you are supposed to put the client's interests first. But with dual enrollment, what your attorneys and accountants can explain to you is many advisory firms are also dual enrolled as brokers. And when they're acting as brokers, they're not obligated to have the client's interests first. And they're also not obligated to tell you, the client, when they're taking off their fiduciary hat and putting on their brokerage hat. So get clear on that and the potential conflict that is there. Because as you think about this, finance is the science of money. We have plenty of data, and that's what you should be relying on, is the data of what has worked well over time. If you go back to the Great Depression and you wanted to optimize a portfolio, you needed to complement financial assets with a 15% allocation to gold. As America's debts have exploded, that number has risen to 20% since the beginning of this millennium. How do we measure that? It's using what's called the Sharpe ratio, the industry standard that seeks to measure some of the risk that goes into the returns that are taken so that you're not equating a portfolio that gets 100% returns from going to the casino with another portfolio that got 100% returns from a diversified stock portfolio. There are dramatically different risks in those strategies. So when you look at this data, it begs the question, why aren't financial plans being executed with physical gold? So as you dig into this data and you see for yourself firsthand how having gold has optimized portfolios, you will begin to understand that when you create a trust, it is arguably the longest term horizon of any other investment strategy out there. This is going to outlive you, and potentially by decades, so that this strategy can succeed in passing the maximum and optimal amount of capital on to those you love most. So when you have a long-term portfolio construction is clearly job one. So realize today, perhaps your trust has a large exposure to a stock and it's done great for you. Very good. But realize an industry dynamic can change, and a stock that looks to be set up brilliantly can be crushed in the blink of an eye. Think about what happened in the dot-com bubble when that burst. Some of the most exciting stocks literally ceased to exist within a couple of years. If you had put your trust in place and died in the winter of 1999, you would never have thought that would have been possible. Everybody was talking about .coms, the internet. It's what's next. When that bubble burst, if your portfolio wasn't optimally constructed with a proper balance of assets, you were crushed. How about the great financial crisis? The same story again. It didn't matter how great your attorneys were who designed your trust or how great your accountants were. If you weren't positioned with a portfolio that could weather that storm, it was devastating. Think about this analogy for your family wealth. You are the pilot in your family's craft, and you're going on a long journey. There is potentially major winds, major shifts in the weather. And right now, as you're about to take off, many of the greatest fighter pilots of our generation who have flown through these storms successfully are almost in unison to a person saying, beware, these winds are treacherous, unlike anything we've ever experienced before. Adjust your course accordingly. In contrast, though, you have these people on the ground who have never flown a craft like yours through such a storm. And they're telling you, don't worry about it. The skies look blue around here. Same old, we'll be fine. Obviously, you are going to be prudent and you are going to want to know and act upon the insights of those great pilots. Well, today, that is what is happening. In contrast to the financial advisory firms in America today that have piloted their clients to essentially 0% gold allocations, you are seeing the greatest and most successful names of our generation saying the dollar does not have a precedent to survive and protect its purchasing power. Reference Ray Dalio. You have people speaking out like Paul Tudor Jones and saying the U.S. Treasury bond is no longer a safe haven. People, that is put your pencils down for a moment and consider the magnitude of what they are saying. Really, the financial building blocks that the U.S. advisory industry is built on are crumbling. The notion that the dollar and specifically the U.S. Treasury bill is a risk-free return asset is simply an artifact of history. It is not true. So you have to gauge your portfolio for this paradigm shift and make sure you have an appropriate allocation to it. We, as part of our trust services platform, offer our time capsule questionnaire, which we give to our clients and encourage them to step through with their attorneys, their accountants, their financial planners, and look at the future as foreigners do, and to look at the future as history tells us we should. Make sure you are aware of the various nuances that have impacted portfolios from generation to generation, and you want to make sure that you are properly allocated. I want to leave you with one story as you think about your trust. This week we were in Coral Gables, Florida, our office, where, as you likely know, Coral Gables is one of the most affluent and beautiful planned communities in America. That story of success began when the Merrick family decided to convert over 1,100 acres of their citrus farms, where today 1 acre alone is worth $13 million. They donated a tremendous amount of wealth to the city to give back, to make this one of the most beautiful communities. It even included waterways and enough land that the University of Miami today stands upon. But the 1920s was a period like today. It was a credit bubble. Credit bubble meaning more and more credit was being extended to people who really couldn't clearly pay it back. Throughout time, whenever there's been a credit bubble, that bubble has burst and it has wreaked havoc on people who are not properly positioned. When the credit bubble of 1920s burst, even though the Merrick family had a team of advisors, accountants, and attorneys, they just weren't expecting it. Their estate was worth less than $400 at the end. Make no mistake about it. If the Merrick family had allocated to physical gold within their portfolio, that would not have been their outcome. They would have been positioned to take advantage of the extraordinary opportunities that bursting of the credit bubble presented. America, if you want to be a good steward of the capital that's been entrusted to you, you've got to get a handle on the basics. You've got to know what's in your trust.